It's the Matt Sager Podcast, Wednesday, January 9th of 2019, and it is now official. There will be no host for the Oscars. I mean, they're keeping the door open that perhaps, just perhaps, they'll extend an offer to another comic or an actor, and it's conceivable that someone they approach might actually say yes. But the way they've handled this debacle with Kevin Hart and the way Ellen DeGeneres got herself involved, it's a mess. And I'll grant you, there's really little in the world as meaningless and pointless as award shows. For the actors themselves, it's a big deal that they get to say, ooh, I'm an Academy Award-winning performer. Next time you call me up to cast me in a movie, my rate's gone way up. But as far as us, the viewing public, it's like, who cares? I know there are Oscar parties and there's betting pools and stuff, but we are drowning in award shows. There are simply too many. This is speaking as a guy who, back in the day, worked on many of these. I remember in particular, my favorite award show that I ever worked on when I was sort of a TV grunt before getting into radio and getting on the air and eventually becoming a voice actor. I worked production here in New York City for the 1994 Grammy Awards, hosted by Gary Shandling and taking place at Radio City Music Hall. That was a debacle of a different sort. You may remember that as the year when Frank Sinatra won his Lifetime Achievement Award, then had a sort of rambling speech. It was very clear that he wasn't going to end, that he was just going to sort of continue on. Why they weren't prepared for this is unclear. But as he began thanking family members and people who no one knew who he was talking about and just going on, the band played him out, which was a terrible idea. Would have been much, much better to simply not have had Frank go up and accept the award. Because right after they played him off, a couple things happened. I was in the production trailer at that time. I wasn't in the venue watching, and it was just me and the phones. And suddenly, and seriously, whoever calls the production trailer for the Grammys in the middle of the show? But the lines lit up like crazy, and I took more death threats that night. Call after call after call, like maybe 30 consecutive phone calls from people going, you don't know what you just did to the chairman. We're going to get you. We know where you live. I'm like, I'm just barely even beyond an intern. I had nothing to do with this. And no one ever went after me, thankfully. I would have let Frank continue all night. At the time, I was dating Tony Bennett's daughter. You'll hear no complaints from me about crooners, and I think they've earned their time. If anything, they are quite deserving of any attention paid to them, especially in this day and age where it's all about the new, young, dumb YouTube sensation. No offense to any young, dumb YouTube sensations who may be listening right now, but really, people like Sinatra who'd accomplished so much deserve better, for real. And Billy Joel got revenge on the Grammys, because later that night, he did a performance of his big hit from that year, River of Dreams. And built into that song, if you know it, and if not, check out Apple Music or Amazon Music, or I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. But one of the little gimmicks of that song was that right before the chorus, there would be this momentary pause, just for a second before the chorus. But after what happened with Sinatra, he would instead go, "What I'm looking for," and then just stop down for like 30, 45, even 60 seconds and glare at the camera like, you don't know what you just did. I'm telling you, the love that people had for Frank Sinatra was such that this slight was incredibly offensive and insulting to them. And as I said, landed me a guy who was making maybe like $9 an hour. Personal death threats. Quite concerning. Bad form. You really want to be prepared on all fronts when you're doing an award show. So Kevin Hart was going to be the host of the Oscars this year. Kevin Hart, who up until this time had been unimpeachable, had this new book out that people were buying by the truckloads. It's like the #1 audiobook on audible.com. As a comic whose work I'm not really familiar with, I was like, oh, this Kevin Hart guy seems like one of these guys who's just on a streak that only goes upwards. I should really find out more about him and pursue his work. And of course, long before I had any time or inclination to do that, he made an ass out of himself and lost the gig as host of this year's Oscars. So some years back, a few years ago, Kevin Hart made some homophobic slurs and jokes at their expense on Twitter. And after he'd been announced as the host of the Academy Awards, a lot of people called him on it. Drew the Academy's attention to it, grabbed screenshots, so even if Hart deleted the tweets, people had, oh, no, here's evidence. He said awful things about gays. Or he joked at their expense at a time when, really, when you're an oppressed minority, you can feel all sorts of different ways about jokes done at your expense, and taking offense is certainly one of them. The thing is, though, it is a very weird climate right now in which comparatively minor offenders, I say comparatively, like Kevin Hart, when you consider that we've got a government and a cabinet full of officials who really spend their days, their time, their money and energy at creating laws and a national atmosphere that is designed to genuinely harm and oppress members of the LGBTQ community. when you've got people who refuse to marry same-sex couples, transphobia, homophobia is rampant. And that doesn't mean that Kevin Hart's jokes get a pass. I'm just saying that it's weird that performers are held to such standards and our leaders aren't. Now, part of that is simply because you can hold Kevin Hart's feet to the fire. And what can you really do about Mike Pence? Nothing. But Hart handled it strangely. The Oscars said to him, listen, why don't you just apologize? And for whatever reason, he would not. He then made a last-ditch play earlier this week, the wisdom of which I really question. Not only of Hart, but of all involved. In particular, I'm talking about Ellen DeGeneres, who had him on her show, and she made this big push saying, listen, as someone who myself is a big spokesperson for the LGBTQ community, and as someone who's a comic, I support Kevin Hart. I don't think he did anything wrong. I believe he should be allowed to host the Oscars, and let's just call it a day. And it's possible she would have succeeded with this push, although it is odd that she would place herself in the middle like this, only opening herself up for potential bad publicity. I can only assume she really meant very, very well. But during the course of the show, she gave Kevin Hart a bunch of opportunities to apologize, and instead, he went down this narrative road that she followed him on, in which Kevin Hart was not the bad guy. This was not about some bad jokes he told. He was the victim of a hate campaign. Hate of what? It's not really clear. You know, trolls. Basically, anytime someone calls you out on social media for saying something that offends people, there are numerous ways you can respond. If you regret it or you regret hurting someone's feelings, you can explain and apologize. If you don't regret it and think people should just suck it up and say, listen, we're comedians, we make fun of people, no holds barred. No offense was meant, but this is what comedy is about. You can make that statement, and the chips will fall where they may. But the statement that really galls me, the tact I really despise, something that I actually frankly equate with people like Mike Pence, is when someone digs up something awful that you've said or something hurtful or negative or derogatory that you said. And instead of saying, yeah, I said it, what are you going to do about it? Or, yes, I said it and I'm sorry. To instead say, yes, I said it, but no one would know if it weren't for the trolls and the haters. I'm the victim. That rarely goes over well. And Ellen, bless her, I know she meant well. She tried so hard to get him to just say, listen, I'm a little sorry. But instead, he just got so caught up in self-pity that it seemed she couldn't help but sympathize with him, which was very odd. And as a result, the Oscars have announced not only will he not be the host, but they've reached out to a few performers, all of whom are potentially as problematic as Hart would have been. But they're all going, no, I'm not going to ruin my career. I'm not looking for trouble. And so for the first time in 30 years, it will be an Oscars event with no host. It will instead feature lots of sort of segments. You know, someone who will give out all the musical related awards, perhaps. But primarily, there's going to be what Variety.com cringily describes as a focus on Starry Skits. Whew. Okay, so let me go back to that Oscars 30 years ago to which I referred earlier, in which there were no hosts. There were instead Starry Skits. They thought that would go over just as well. It was 1989's Academy Awards, and before I play you this audio, I should tell you that it marked the tragic end of the career of producer Allan Carr, who admittedly, I'm sure they knew they were getting some camp when they brought him on board. He produced Grease, which is a big deal. He also produced Grease 2, and the legitimately classic but legitimately over-the-top crazy campy Can't Stop the Music, which was it was basically pre-Spice World. It was that type of movie, but about the Village People. So camp was certainly on the menu for the evening. And so in lieu of a host, there is this bizarre Starry Skit featuring Merv Griffin, Rob Lowe, and this poor actress, Eileen Bowman, 24-year-old whose career was ruined overnight, just like Allan Carr's was. He never worked again. He became a recluse and died sad and alone. So lest you think that this stuff is just pop culture fluff, there are real-world repercussions when you do something like a Starry Skit. Here's an example from that 1989 disaster.
Oh, Mr. Lowe, I'm such a fan.
Really? Wow. I'm a big fan of yours, Snow, but you know, there's so much I'd like to know about you.
Used to work a lot for Walt Disney.
Okay, just to be clear, if you want to watch along with me, go to YouTube and enter in the search box the 11 minutes that ruined Hollywood producer Allan Carr's career forever. It ruined many more careers besides. There's a great shot in here, by the way, where they cut to Robert Downey Jr. He looks like he just ate like bad fish. He's just disgusted by the spectacle of it all, as he should be.
Starring in cartoons every night and day.
But she said goodbye to Grumpy and Sleepy. Left the dwarves behind, came to town to stay. Lights keep on burning, cameras keep on turning. Rolling, rolling, keep the cameras rolling.
Wow, keep the cameras rolling. You know, I've never said this before, and I doubt I'll ever say it again, but I wish that Ike Turner had been there with a belt to just beat the living hell out of Lowe, Merv, all of them. This was an affront to music itself and taste. And for everyone who's ever said, oh, there are too many award shows, that attitude has no better argument that I am aware of than the just horrific abortion that was the '89 Oscars. So when I hear the words Starry Skit, I get a little cringy. I do think, by the way, that there are too many award shows. It's really kind of silly. Certainly the Academy Awards should continue, as should the Grammys. And the Tonys are very special because Broadway is a really wonderful art, one which, unlike all these other genres and forms of entertainment, does not really get its due very often. So there should certainly be the Tonys. And I guess because I'm in the union, I have to say I support the SAG Awards. And I do. It's cool that we get to vote on our own. You know, as actors ourselves, we become a bit of a part of the community without having to join the Academy. You know, I got to vote on awards this year. And the Golden Globes, absolutely. Foreign press is a huge deal. But I mean, the MTV Music Awards, which I worked on, again, back when I was a TV grunt. I worked on like 4 different broadcasts of that. Met Michael Jackson at one of them. Met Hootie at the same one, of the Blowfish fame. But those shows are awful. MTV gave up on music entirely years ago. So now when they trot out these Video Music Awards, it's all this shallow, bad, awful music, which is just, you know, it's an effect of the era in which we live, in which there's not a ton of great music, certainly not original sounding great music that's being produced. But it's also that, like, how is MTV qualified anymore to give out music awards? They don't play music. They should have reality show awards, 15 Years and Pregnant awards. Similarly, the Billboard Awards. I just want to remind you that Billboard had a headline not that long ago, just a few years ago, on their cover, written by a man who was once my music editor at a publication, and I had to laugh. Nickelback, Band of the Decade. So how in the hell is Billboard qualified? And who even cares? Like, after the Grammys, can we just not have one award show or 2 maybe? I mean, the amount of original programming that we're sacrificing for these masturbatory award shows is silly. And absent a host, this idea of Starry Skits, I don't know. I think there ought to be some kind of cohesive element to keep this all together, to keep this from being a 1989. My God, if I were producing this year's Oscars, I would be watching this video from the 1989 Oscars and waking up every night in a cold sweat. There is so much that can go wrong. In the case of the 89 awards, everything went wrong. And there were very real consequences. Many of the people involved never worked again, nor were even acknowledged at places where showbiz people went to hang out. I mean, they were ostracized in a way that I really haven't heard of or seen, other than documentaries about, like, the hearings in the 50s when people had to name communists or be shunned. This was the most grotesque thing, short of that I'm aware of to have happened in the entertainment industry. So if you want to move forward Oscars without a host, I wish you the very best. I understand both the Academy's reluctance to bet on another host, who undoubtedly, if you go for any comedian, their Twitter feed is going to have something in there that's going to really offend a big group of people. And that's legitimate. I can have my opinion, you can have yours. But if you're hurt by something that someone said about you or your group, your ethnicity, your cultural background, your sexuality, your gender, that pain is legitimate. You have every right to feel that way. And if even worse, the next host they go for not only has that in their social media history, but like Kevin Hart is unrepentant, or even worse, plays the victim, I get it. I can see why you'd want to go without hosting. Similarly, Chris Rock, uninvited the other night, said, I'm not hosting the Oscars. Don't even ask. Ask Steve Martin. Don't look at me. I'm not looking to end my career. You know, he hosted the Oscars twice. Those were both very entertaining shows. But again, this is a very strange time. One in which people who it's been just totally okay to mock and ridicule and dehumanize them are suddenly really pissed off when you do that, and I don't blame them. Just as I've got a real sympathy for the comedians who are like, listen, it was 2012. Everyone was making these jokes. I didn't mean to offend anyone. But unlike Kevin Hart, if I were the comic in question, I would say, and I'm really sorry I didn't know. And I'm sorry that I hurt people. And I'm sorry I didn't know better. But anyone who steps up and accepts an offer to host the Oscars now has got to be just unimpeachable. Has to somehow have been a wildly successful and popular big-name comic with a career that's developed over the past several years, and also not have anything that's deeply offensive to any group in their social media history. I don't believe there is such a person, and so hostless seems to be the way to go. But I would simply ask, be very, very careful when writing, crafting, and producing these starry skits, because they can go very wrong.
Rolling, rolling, keep the cameras rolling, keep the
Yeah, they can go quite poorly. So best of luck to all involved, to the Academy, to the many stars who will be performing in these starry skits, who, by the way, I fully expect for everyone who participates in these skits to have people going over their social media history too. So if we're not careful, the Oscars is just going to be some announcer in a room alone. And maybe that's the right thing to do at this point. But I'll say this, as unpleasant as it was taking calls threatening my life back in the 94 Grammys, as much as I thought, wow, this is as tense as an award show environment can get, I am very happy to say I will not be involved in this year's Oscars in any way, shape, or form, other than perhaps watching the highlights that will undoubtedly be posted on YouTube and various blogs all throughout the night. Highlights that I predict are going to be cringe-erific. Get in touch with the Matt Sager podcast. I'd love to have you on as a guest, take your questions, talk about the Academy Awards. Unlike them, I'm not afraid. You can contact Matt at mattsager.com. That's my email address. Call me at 646-535-4788 or get me on social media where I have a very clean, unoffensive record. On Twitter, I'm at Matt Sager. Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager, and on Facebook, I'm The Matt Sager. Also, check out my voiceover page on Facebook. It's Matt Sager VO. And this podcast page is Matt Sager Podcast. Also, check out the links in the description for tonight's podcast episode for links both to that horrific Academy Award sketch from 1989, in addition to links to my Patreon and my merch store, where I've got coffee mugs, t-shirts, sweaters, stickers, and more for fans of the Matt Sager Podcast from my friends at WeHaveMerch.com. As for everything else, my voiceover reels, contact information, articles, blog posts, archive back episodes of this podcast, and much more, you can find all that at my website, mattsagervoiceover.com.